Good morning, everybody. It is 7 o'clock. You are very welcome to join us on The Breakfast Show here on Sky News as Russian missiles strike Ukraine again overnight. We're live in Kyiv. We'll also talk to a Ukrainian politician later this hour. And from Ukraine to its border with Belarus, joined in the studio by the exiled Belarusian opposition leader convicted in absentia this week of treason. Plus, as talks continue to try to ease tensions between unions and the Health Secretary, joined by the former Health Secretary, Stephen Dorrell, to get his take on whether there's an end in sight. Full weather forecast too if you're heading out to work in the white stuff. It's Thursday, the 9th of March.
Russian missiles strike Ukrainian cities overnight and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant loses power.
Weather warnings of up to 40 centimetres of snow and blizzards in some parts as the cold blast hits.
Cashing in, Sky News can reveal that Boris Johnson has earned 85% of all of the outside earnings generated by MPs this year. How much is that? Almost £5 million. NHS strike stalks rumble on, but there will be a breakthrough, potentially, we're told. Of mice and men, scientists create mice with two biological fathers, but could it lead to biological babies for same-sex couples? From Master and Miss to Prince and Princess, Harry and Meghan have begun using royal titles for their two children. What do you think about that? Tackling stigma. I'll speak to the rugby legend Gareth Thomas about a new awareness campaign to change perceptions about HIV. Morning, everyone. Let's start with some breaking news from overnight. Russian missiles have struck cities right across Ukraine, including the capital, Kyiv, the Black Sea port of Odesa and the second city of Kharkiv. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has lost power. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, joins us now from Kyiv. Stuart, good morning. What's happening?
Well, it's been about 3 weeks since we've seen this type of thing. It's a big attack. At least 2 explosions here in Kyiv, but in other cities as well. In one had apparently 15 different hits. There's always a slight confusion because it can be the air defence system that is bringing down incoming missiles, so that can create a feeling of more attacks, but actually sometimes it's just the defence. We know that some residential areas have been hit as well, and of course this power plant. Now, that can keep going. It's been cut off the grid, basically, so some of the reactors are being closed down, but it still has power, but it only has power for another 10 days or so from its generators, so they'll be working on that immediately. But as I say, we've seen this before. The Russians go after energy infrastructure across the country, and that's been going on for months now, but there has been quite a gap for the last few weeks.
Indeed, so, and it's alarming that this nuclear power plant has been taken out again. What happens when that's the case?
Well, obviously, all nuclear power plants have to have a continuous supply of energy to keep the reactors cool and working properly. And yes, it has been at the centre of a storm for a long time as to who's in control of it and whether it's being attacked or is actually, as the Russians have been accused of attacking Ukraine from it. As I was saying, it's the grid that it's been cut off from. So it's the attacks on, if you like, the Ukraine, free Ukraine, if you like, as opposed to the Russian-controlled parts of the country. Because it's been cut off from that, they now kick in with their generators. As I say, they can last, I think there's 19 of those diesel generators, and they can keep going for about another 10 days, as the authorities here said, so the countdown clock starts straight away. But they will be attempting to get that power back on as soon as they can.
OK, and just while we have you, Stuart, an overview, if you would, please, about the situation in Ukraine at the moment.
Well, there's fighting going on along this whole of the front line, 600 miles, but it's Bakhmut that we've been looking at really closely. That's become a symbol. The Russians want to take it, claim victory there for the first time in about 6 months. And the Ukrainians, at the moment at least, are saying they're determined to hold on to it, again, symbolically to show their defiance. There was some suggestion that the government might withdraw its forces, but they've said no to that in the last day or so, and that they're sending more troops there. Terrible battle going on there, Kay. You know, huge numbers of soldiers are dying every single day, and it goes on. They seem to be at a stalemate somewhat this morning. There is a sense that the Russians have the upper hand, but the Ukrainians are putting in more men all the time, and this, what they call the meat grinder, is going to carry on killing people for certain.
OK, Stuart Fanai, thank you, live in Kiev for us this morning. Around 8:30, joined by the exiled Belarusian opposition leader convicted in absentia this week of treason and sentenced to 15 years in jail. Her husband in jail for 18 years after she lost the attempt to win the election in 2020. The UK cold snap is expected to worsen for many today, with more snow predicted across large parts, bringing the threat of power cuts and also travel delays. Let's get more. Should we, Lisa, standing by for us in Derbyshire this morning? Oh, goodness, it's very blowy where you are. No snow here in London. It was predicted here, but a lot in other parts of the country.
Well, we are in the highest market town in England, so if it's predicted to snow, it usually snows here. And we made the trip along the A515 between Ashbourne and Buxton, just on the edge of the Peak District. It can be very treacherous in the snow. It wasn't too bad early this morning, but that could well change this afternoon, because we are expecting for some parts up to 40 centimetres of snow, snowstorms and blizzards as well, stretching from the north of the Midlands area, kind of the Stoke-on-Trent area, going right up to the northeast and Durham as well. And it's this amber weather warning that people are worried about, expecting significant disruption, particularly on the road. So if people do have an essential journey to make, then people have been told they need to be prepared to have proper clothing in their cars, food and drink, and some means of charging their phone up as well. It's cold. It was -1 here last night. Just when we thought it was entering spring, we saw temperatures of -15 in Scotland on Tuesday night. So it would be nice to see a bit of warmer weather and some sunshine soon, wouldn't it? But we could see this snow continuing through to Friday.
OK, thank you. Taking a look at these spectacular pictures from yesterday. Here we go. How cool is that? Wow. Farmers in the Shetland Islands recorded what's known as a snow devil, which form when winds pick up snow into a vortex. It's a little bit like is it a hurricane? What's it called when it... Tornado, there you go. A snow tornado, it says that on Autocue, was spotted when they were out feeding their sheep. No one injured, thankfully. Now, it's time to get your view on a story making headlines this morning. We have been asking you all week to offer your views via Twitter. We were asking you about whether Boris Johnson's dad should be a knight or not. Today, I'm sure this is going to divide opinion. 1 foot in, 1 foot out. It's the Sussexes again. Prince Harry and Meghan's daughter Lilibet has been named a princess. What do you think about that? After they separated from the royal family and moved to the US after all the disputes and front pages, now they've accepted the title of princess for Lilibet. Do you think, and that's obviously their little boy as well, he's also a prince. It's Alfie? Can't remember his name. Anyway, he's going to be a prince. Archie, there you go, thank you. Tweet me at Kay Burley and we will read out your comments on the telly. Should they take the titles of prince and princess after everything they've said about the royal family here in the UK? Tweet me directly if you would like to, at Kay Burley, and we will share some of your comments with the world a little bit later on. Now, though, for some more exclusive news to bring you from our Westminster Accounts series, Boris Johnson is still making a significant amount of money 6 months after walking out of number 10. In fact, the former Prime Minister's earnings make up 85% of all of the outside earnings generated by all of the other MPs this year. Sam Coates has more.
The most famous face in British politics. This week, 6 months since Boris Johnson was forced to leave number 10. In resignation, he promised the nation there were good times ahead.
Even if things can sometimes seem dark now, our future together is golden.
For him, it certainly has been.
Here are the MPs who have declared the most in outside earnings so far in this Parliament.
And at the top, it's not even close. Nearly £5 million in earnings for Boris Johnson. Almost all of that earned in the 6 short months since he departed Downing Street. And £22 million, now that's the total amount of money all 650 MPs have declared on top of their £84,000 a year salary since the last election in December 2019. And here are the MPs that have registered the most in outside income so far in 2023. So we've got the data for just under 2 months of earnings. Now, understandably, many of these numbers are quite small, but one man clearly is having a very good year, financially at least. The former Prime Minister has registered over £3.7 million in extra income just since the turn of the year. He's been paid over £500,000 by publisher HarperCollins for a book that's yet to be published, and nearly £2.5 million from an agency which the former Prime Minister describes as an advance for speaking engagements. Now, the sheer scale of Boris Johnson's earnings are really rather extraordinary. So look at this. £4.4 million is the total sum of outside earnings made by all 650 MPs so far in 2023. And of that figure, Boris Johnson alone has earned 85% of the cash. The highly paid speaking gigs have spanned Singapore, New York and Mumbai, and now Westminster. Not Parliament. This, a conference just down the road. Boris Johnson giving his first public reaction to Rishi Sunak's Brexit deal, what just happens to be a very lucrative platform. Boris Johnson, how much are they paying you to pronounce at the Brand Finance Conference? Why aren't you doing this in Parliament? Uxbridge in West London is where Boris Johnson has made his political home. This is not a safe seat. Some constituents far from happy. Do you think he should stand again? And if he did, would you vote for him?
No, I don't think I'd vote for him again. He's making a lot of money, like you say, doing other things. So, yes, step down.
I'm okay with that, but I wanted him to focus more on his constituency. I'm here working 6 days a week, but I never see him.
Being slung out of office by his own party doesn't appear to have dented Boris Johnson's earning power. But is this the golden future he dreamed of? Sam Coates, Sky News.
£5 million, eh? Sam will be here in the next hour to tell us more about what he's uncovered in the Westminster accounts. You can find out more about the Westminster accounts, a joint project between Sky and Tortoise Media, and use our special online tool by visiting skynews.com or on the Sky News app. Now, scientists in Japan have managed to create mice with 2 biological fathers by generating eggs from male cells. It's a development that could open new possibilities for reproduction for same-sex couples. Saba's been looking into it for us. Good morning.
Good morning, Kay. Well, this really is a major scientific breakthrough by those very clever people at Osaka University in Japan, potentially paving the way for human male couples to have children. Now, it's a very complicated method, but essentially how it works in essence is that they have found through research that by converting male skin cells into stem cells, they're able to create eggs. Now, these eggs are then fertilised with the sperm of another mouse, creating mice. Now, in doing this process, they have created 7 healthy mice, they're saying, with a normal lifespan. And this process, the scientists are saying, could also be used to help with certain genetic conditions. For example, Turner syndrome is something that they say could be helped in the long term. But the scientists have also stressed that, this is something that they say could potentially help human male couples have children in the future. But this is something where there are still many obstacles in the way and could still take many years in the making.
OK, Sabah, thanks very much indeed. Interesting stuff there, huh? Fantastic. Let's tell you about the Alzheimer's Society. They have seen a stark rise in visitors to its website since the family of Bruce Willis revealed he has dementia. Check this out. The Hollywood star was confirmed to have been living with a form of dementia by his daughter last month, prompting more awareness around the disease. The family of Bruce Willis posted this photo on Instagram, sharing his specific diagnosis: frontotemporal dementia. Around the time of the announcement, the chief exec of the charity reported a 12,000% increase in visitors to the site. And if you want to reach out for help, visit alzheimers.org.uk. We'll put that on a strap for you later on. Alzheimers.org. There you go. Alzheimers.org.uk. Still to come on the programme for you this morning, we'll tell you about a new campaign to promote regular checks for breast cancer. I'm joined by the Shadow Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. That coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. And I'll speak to an Egyptian cardiologist who's now being funny for money. Also making news today after days of protest, Georgia's ruling party has said it's dropping a controversial bill on foreign agents. Opponents claim it's inspired by a similar Russian law and represented an authoritarian shift in the country. Protesters say it could stifle media freedom and damage the country's hopes of joining the EU. Last night, police fired water cannon and tear gas grenades to disperse demonstrators in the capital. 3 people have been arrested in relation to the murder of Elle Edwards, who was shot outside a Merseyside pub on Christmas Eve. Merseyside police said a man and a woman have been arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder. Another was charged with possession of a prohibited weapon. 22-year-old Connor Chapman has already been charged with the murder and due to go on trial in June of this year. A security officer and an alleged robber have been killed in a shootout at an airport in Chile after what authorities say was an attempted heist to steal more than $32 million. The shootout took place on a runway after around 10 armed robbers attempted to steal the cash, which was being unloaded from a plane from Miami. A man has been released on bail after he was arrested over footage shot inside a police cordon on the day Nicola Bulley's body was found. Police said a 34-year-old from Worcestershire was questioned on suspicion of malicious communications offences and perverting the course of justice. The government is announcing a new £29 million package of funding aimed at tackling loneliness in disadvantaged areas across England. A quarter of adults in the UK experience loneliness, as Alice reports.
Pat is 100 years old and widowed. Her family live far away. Her disability means even getting out of the flat is a challenge.
My carer took me last week out in a chair and took me all round the block, and she's got permission from her office to take me out every Friday, she said, to take me out and give me a bit of fresh air, because otherwise I hadn't been out for 2 years.
Right, here's your coffee, Pat. There you go.
Lindsay volunteers with Age UK, and for the last 6 years, she's been visiting Pat to keep her company.
I look forward to it. Write it down, Lindsay coming. Yes. Oh, yes, it does. Makes my day.
While loneliness is often associated with old age, figures suggest that many feel isolated, particularly young people. A quarter of people in the UK feel lonely. 36% of 16 to 29-year-olds experience loneliness, but only 16% of those over 70 experience loneliness. The government's new funding for volunteers may go some way in tackling loneliness, but not everyone is convinced.
Until we can start looking at chronic loneliness as part of the mental health spectrum, we're going to find that actually this may put provision in place, and these initiatives may reach some people, but it may not tackle the underlying issue, and also the fact that people are highly unlikely to put their hand up and ask for support until it's already too late.
Volunteers may not help everyone struggling with loneliness, but for people like Pat, they're invaluable. Alice Porter, Sky News.
The Oscars take place this Sunday, but most of the spotlight is on the actors absent from this year's ceremony. Next year, the Oscars will introduce a new set of criteria to ensure diversity among nominees, but this year's nominees show there is still a lot of work to be done. There are no women nominated for Best Director and only 2 black actors nominated across all acting categories. But for the first time, 4 Asian actors have been nominated, including Ke Huy Quan for his role in Everything Everywhere All at Once. Sky News caught up with his former co-star Martha Plimpton. She reflected on the success of their film The Goonies, and how proud she is of her former co-star.
Well, I'm certainly impressed by the fact that it's really taken such a hold in the popular culture, and I don't think any of us expected that it necessarily would when it came out. I mean, we all had an extraordinary time filming it, and you know, I guess ultimately it did change all of our lives, really. No, I mean, it's wonderful. I think it's lovely, and I'm especially excited for Kyiv because, I mean, my gosh, he's the dearest human being and the sweetest man, and that he's experiencing this wave of appreciation and love from all over is just really lovely. I'm really excited and happy for him.
Trying to remember what TV programme she's in. She's really, really good at. If you know, send me a tweet, put me out in misery, @KBurley. And we will have exclusive coverage of the Oscars here on Sky News from the red carpet in Hollywood from 7 o'clock on Sunday. And then we'll be live with all the winners here on Breakfast next Monday. Growing speculation that a pay deal could be reached by today as talks between Health Secretary Steve Barclay and also representatives from 3 unions draw to a close. The NHS has been hit by a series of strikes this winter, with the service already under severe strain. So let's speak to a former Health Secretary about it. Should we see what he thinks? Former chair of the NHS Confederation as well, Stephen Dorrell, of course. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Kate.
Do you miss the job?
Yes, of course I miss it. If you spend the bulk of your life in politics, you miss the buzz of politics. And the most important thing, actually, about being Health Secretary is the opportunity to deliver high-quality services that make a real difference to people's lives. And just linking your first question to me, to your intro, I think the central charge against the way that the government has handled this winter is that it's been reacting all the way through. We've been promised for years a workforce plan for the health service, which should aim to turn it into a good employer, values its people. And that's the gap, it seems to me.
We should say that you were Conservative and now you are a Lib Dem, so you're going to be critical of the government. But let me ask you this, should nurses be a special case?
Well, I think, ask me, but ask most of your viewers. And indeed, the government itself during the pandemic was telling us that NHS staff are special. So I don't think you have to regard them as saints. They're not saints. But when Rishi Sunak and Steve Barclay took office in October, they knew that the health service was going to be under huge pressure over the winter period. It always is, and it was going to be particularly bad this year. Everybody knew that. But here we are still at the beginning of March, talking about the terms that are going to apply in the financial year that runs out in 3 weeks' time.
The NHS gets a massive pot of money every year from the government, but it's incredibly expensive department and service to run. It's never going to have enough money, no matter how much money it's given.
Enough is a funny word in that context. It'll never be able to do everything. That's absolutely true. There are choices to be made. Going back to your original question, the language of politics is the language of choice. You do have to make choices. One of the choices I would wish to see, as somebody who cares about the health service, is that those politically responsible for it demonstrate by their actions the importance they attach to the health service being a good and motivational employer that's able, because it's a good employer, to deliver good services to its patients.
Do you think that nurses and other healthcare workers should get inflation-busting pay rises this year? Would you give it to them?
What I think the government is going to do, and I think it's right that it does it, is to give pay rises that reflect the fact that inflation has been going through is at a very high level currently. There's projections and hopes that it's going to come down. I think it will come down from current levels. But imagining that you can base the pay levels for the current year on inflation as it was 12 months ago has always seemed to me to be for the birds. And the government could have accepted that and had a proper discussion with staff representatives from October.
Is it appropriate that a former Prime Minister earns £5 million in a matter of just a few months and yet still is entitled to get all sorts of severance pay during his time in office and the sort of money that he earns in Parliament?
I think the issue in the Boris Johnson case is he still in politics or is he in show business? That's a question for him, and it's implied by your question. It's also actually a question for other people. If he makes a speech to a commercial audience rather than a speech to Parliament about his reaction to the Northern Ireland deal, should that be headline news? It's a private event for which he's being paid. Is he a public figure or is he a private figure earning good money because he has high profile?
Should he be making those speeches in the House of Commons rather than...
Well, if he wants to be taken seriously as a contributor to political debate, the place where political debate should take place is the House of Commons. Of course, that's true.
OK, it's good to see you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Thank you. Quick look at what's happening as far as the weather's concerned for you now.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
The wintry weather will bring some disruption over the next few days, especially to northern England, but southern parts will turn milder too.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
And this is something you don't see every day in sunny California. Here we go. A thrill-seeking kayaker sliding off the rooftop in South Lake Tahoe in California. The snow had piled up over the last couple of days as a winter storm brought blizzard conditions to the area. Residents are still digging their way out of their homes after they were buried under several feet of snow. It's like a lot of fun though, doesn't it? And with parts of the world experiencing extreme weather conditions, let's have a look at our climate calculator. Here you go. A lot of gas we're using at the moment. Our coal output, I should say, coal-fired power stations has increased. You'll know that 2 of them have been fired up for the first time in many years because of these freezing temperatures. And we are bringing in more than 7% of our power from overseas. This bit's not working, so don't look at it. Let's have a look at other stuff for you. Time for a look through some of the photos that have caught our eye today. Are you more of a savoury or sweet pie kind of person? Well, the British Pie Awards have taken place in Leicestershire with more than 900 entries, ranging from Marmite pies to Balti pies, with the classic punter favourite beef and ale also in the mix. I love a pork pie. This week's freezing weather couldn't get this group of swimmers out of the water as they marked International Women's Day at Portobello Beach in Edinburgh, all in the name of charity. Good for you, ladies. And it wasn't just humans bearing the elements. Animals at Whipsnade Zoo saw a little flurry of snow as well. That tiger not sure what to make of it all. He looks a little bit happier about it all though, doesn't he? Now, Combat Kate. Check this out. In all the papers today, but the big question is, can we have a look at the picture? Here we go. What is wrong with this picture from Combat Kate? We'll tell you after the break. OK, this is live pictures from Buxton in Derbyshire this morning, the highest town in England, as many of you will know, and it is continuing to snow there today. If you are heading outside, we'll bring you the weather forecast shortly. Basically, a lot of snow up north, not so much in the south. No snow at all here in London, despite the promises from the weatherman. Or woman, I should say that. Before the break, we asked you, what's wrong with this picture of Princess Kate, Princess of Wales? There you go. Let's have a look at it full frame and then you can see it a bit easier. OK, this is a picture that's in all the papers today. The Princess of Wales is there and people are saying, oh, what's wrong with the picture? Oh, she's not got a helmet on. No, that's not it. We need to lose that strap, guys. What else is that? She's not got a bulletproof vest on. No, it's not that either. Look where she's put the tourniquet. if he really had an injury in his leg there and that tourniquet was put there, he would bleed out in 2 minutes. We know this because we have to do those sort of courses here at Sky. That is not where you put a tourniquet. You put it up towards the thigh, where you then try to get the bleeding to stop there. Just saying. Our top stories for you this morning. Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is under Russian control, has lost power supply due to what Ukraine says has been a Russian missile strike. Forecasters are warning that parts of the UK will see blizzards today as more Arctic air flows across the UK. And Sky News has revealed how Boris Johnson's shot to the top of the league table for MPs' side earnings this year. Talking about that with Sam at the top of the next hour. Meantime, it's being reported that former Prime Minister Boris Johnson privately warned Dominic Raab about his conduct when he held several cabinet positions under Mr Johnson's leadership. The former PM is understood to have provided evidence to the independent lawyer looking into a number of bullying complaints made by senior civil servants against Mr Raab. Let's get more on this. Tamara standing by. Hi, Tamara, what are you hearing?
Morning, Kate. Well, this is the long-running investigation into Dominic Raab, which has been going on since November into claims of bullying. Now, it's reported by The Telegraph today that Boris Johnson raised Dominic Raab's behaviour with him and is giving evidence to that inquiry. So it's very unusual for a former Prime Minister to give evidence to an inquiry set up by Downing Street and is being described by the newspaper as a major development because it suggests that there were concerns at the very top of government about his behaviour. Now, a spokesman for Boris Johnson and indeed a spokesman for the Cabinet Office wouldn't comment on this, but Dominic Raab was, of course, Foreign Secretary and then Justice Secretary under Boris Johnson. It doesn't say from what point these concerns date, but when Boris Johnson was ill with COVID, it was Dominic Raab who was stepping in to effectively run the country at that time, and he is still the Deputy Prime Minister. Now, we think that that inquiry is coming to a close. Mr Raab has been interviewed by the barrister who's running it, Adam Tolley KC, and I understand there aren't any more people coming forward. There are dozens who have been reported to come forward. Dominic Raab, of course, told Sky News earlier this month that if he was found to have bullied anyone, then he would resign.
OK. For now, tomorrow. Thank you. Looking at the papers for you now. The Guardian reports EU officials have warned the government's illegal migration bill will be in breach of human rights law. The Mail speculates on the future of BBC football presenter Gary Lineker after he criticised the bill. The Telegraph leaks more of Matt Hancock's messages, this time suggesting he was told to tone down a section of his book about COVID leaking from a lab in China. And the Metro reports on Harry and Meghan christening their daughter Lilibet with her official titles. Now, any woman can get breast cancer, men too, in fact. So that's why it's important to check your breasts regularly. A new campaign has been launched using a poem and illustrations to help promote regular checks and ensure people understand the signs and symptoms of breast cancer. Let's take a look.
This is the way to examine your chest. Topless in front of a mirror is best. If your breasts are fairly hefty, lift them up, righty, lefty. Have a snoop beneath each one, then turn to the side for a look once that's done. You're looking for lumps on the surface of the skin. You're checking to see if the nipple's pulled in. Look out for a puckering, dimple or tether. Now raise your arms up high, together. This position may help reveal a bump or lump your breasts conceal.
Well, joining us now is the consultant breast surgeon and two-time breast cancer survivor, Dr. Liz O'Riordan. Hello to you, Doctor. Thank you for joining us. So tell me how all of this came about with some of the illustrations around as we're chatting.
So I'm a breast surgeon who's had breast cancer, and hands up, I never checked my breasts, and I realised so many of my patients didn't know how to do. So in lockdown, I just put a video online showing people. And Laura Bradford, the poet behind this, contacted me and said, I'm 37 and I didn't know this. I want to make a poem that's catchy, that's not scary. And she reached out to the incredible artist Ella May Statham, who got women of all shapes and sizes to come and act as models, just to create something that we can help every woman check their breasts. And I've been blown away by the response.
Why do you think it is, first of all, that women don't know how to do it? And then, even if they did have an idea, a lot of women just don't check their breasts, do they?
I mean, I never did. I was a breast surgeon, I thought it won't happen to me. I don't think we're taught at schools. You may see little videos online, but it's not how a breast surgeon does it. My mum didn't tell me how to do it. And I just think, especially when you're young and mammograms don't work, it's the one thing you have to pick up breast cancer early. And that's why we've created this free resource to try and help every woman learn what to do.
Although ultrasounds help a little bit.
Ultrasounds are great for lumps, but they're not great for screening the whole breast. And that's why young women don't get mammograms, because their breasts are too dense to see a cancer.
OK, so tell us what women should do. Obviously, we've got the illustrations behind, and where can we find this?
So at the moment, it's just on our Instagram account, and we're hoping that we can create a website to share this all over the world, to get it translated just for free. You need to look at your breasts, you need to feel them, you need to check your armpit. It's all in the poem, and if there's anything you're worried about, let your GP know.
When do you need to do it?
If you have periods, then you should do it in the middle of your cycle, when your breasts are less lumpy. If you stopped having periods, then pick a date, and a lot of people go for the first of the month.
And is it once a month that you should?
Every month, ideally.
When you're in the shower?
Ideally, when you're lying flat in bed, rest up in a couple of pillows, especially if you have large breasts. Otherwise, you're not feeling the breast tissue. And we talk about that in the poem.
Tell me what happened to you.
So I was 40, I was a consultant breast surgeon, and I had a lump. I ignored it. My mum said get it checked out, and it was a stage 3 breast cancer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, stage 3.
Stage 3.
Goodness.
And it came back on my chest wall a couple of years later, which meant I had to retire. So I now spend my time doing this just to help educate women.
When you say on your chest wall, difficult to feel it there?
I thought it was a nodular scar tissue, and I'm a consultant breast surgeon, and I didn't know.
If you find a lump, what do you do?
It's really scary. And most women with lumps aren't cancer. But what I tell anyone to do is go and see their GP. They will refer you into a breast clinic, and they can do the scans and hopefully put your mind at ease.
Yeah, as you say, most lumps are not. I mean, I have had several lumps removed. Thankfully, none of them, touch wood, have been cancer. But it is scary.
It's very scary.
And you didn't go, even though you found a lump. Why did you not go?
I just thought, it's not cancer. I've had cysts before. I'm not worried about this one. It looked the same. And it was my mum who said, look, I'm worried. And she was right. And that fear of what if can be paralysing.
How did you get together with the lady that wrote the poem? And also, how did you then decide how to illustrate it?
So Laura Bradford, who wrote it, who lives in France, contacted me and said, I've seen your video. I'm inspired. I want to make something that's not scary, that's accessible. And her aunt, who has secondary breast cancer, said, there's potential in this. I'm going to pay for you to have it illustrated. And Laura reached out to Ella May Statham, who got women to send in photographs of themselves of all shapes and sizes, so we can make it real. And you can find yourself in this poem and think, I can do this.
Am I right in saying that men can contract?
Yes, men do get breast cancer. It's rare, but it does happen. They also get mammograms. And we've had incredible men sharing it yesterday, even though it was International Women's Day.
OK, and as far as men are concerned, same things apply, but even more difficult to get them to go to the doctor.
It's scary. And again, being in a clinic full of women, it's not something that men normally feel comfortable with, especially when breast cancer is mainly pink in the media. But if you notice bleeding on your nipple or you have a lump, you should also get it checked out.
OK. And how's your health now?
All clear, touch wood.
Fantastic. It's great to hear. Thank you very much indeed for explaining
Claire.
that to us. And we can find it on your Instagram at the moment.
Instagram at the moment, and we're hoping someone will help us get a resource so we can share it widely.
Well, let's see what we can do about that. What's the Instagram?
I'm O'Riordan Liz, and the author is Totally Telling Tales. That's Laura Bradford's account, so you can find it there.
When we clip this up for our Twitter feed, we'll make sure we say that as well. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's great to see you. Thank you. Now, he didn't have to die. Those are the words of a grieving sister as she accused Scottish authorities of a catalogue of failings over her brother's murder. Alan Geddes was stabbed 40 times hours after violent prisoner Stuart Quinn was unexpectedly released from jail. Conor Gillis reports.
Are you Daddy's boy, Lucas?
Alan Geddes adored his son Lucas, a popular family man. But he was brutally murdered at the hands of Stuart Quinn, a violent serial criminal with a history of psychotic outbursts. Someone who'd been released from prison here in the northeast of Scotland just hours before he stabbed Alan 40 times.
Came out in court that he had been shouting for his family, that his family would help, and that rings in my ears and it breaks my heart.
Stuart Quinn's release from prison that day was both unexpected and unplanned, and it led to him having a distressed state of mind. Now a report sheds light on how the authorities handled that release, and it paints a very bleak picture. It says that he posed a risk of violence, there was no accommodation or care package put in place, and it concludes that that is likely to have impacted the outcome.
This report is a catalogue of failings. It's almost like we're enabling them to go out there and do it because nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody's making a decision. Therefore, someone is either going to be hurt badly or killed.
And your brother was the one that was murdered?
And my brother was the one that was killed, yes.
This report examines the killer's interactions with NHS mental health teams in the 18 months leading up to the murder. It states aspects of that care, including how risks were assessed and managed, which, if acted on, might have mitigated the risk of violence.
Systematic failures right across the system. It's quite clear that Stuart Quinn should never have just been released back into society.
There were gaps in the system to prepare inmates for reintegration. The process suspended due to operational pressures 3 months before Quinn was freed. Authorities say an overhaul is coming.
I'm angry now. I'm angry that my brother would still have been here. That it was a death that didn't have to take place. My brother wouldn't have had to suffer like he did.
The officials involved have promised to learn lessons. Conor Gillis, Sky News.
Back to our top story for you now. Russian missiles have struck cities right across Ukraine, including the capital Kyiv, the Black Sea port of Odesa, and the second city of Kharkiv. The Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant has lost power. It's the most forecast attacks since for the last 3 weeks or something like that is what we were hearing from Stuart. Joining us now from Kyiv is Inna Sovsun, who is a member of Ukraine's parliament representing the Golos party. Hello to you, good to see you. Thanks for joining us. The most intense for 3 weeks, focusing on the capital as well. Tell us what the latest situation is where you are.
Well, I'm in Kyiv right now. I woke up at 5:50 Kyiv time because I heard the explosion. Truth be told, I didn't hear the air raid sirens over the night. So I literally woke up to the sounds of the explosions. And then there were 2 more that I could hear of in Kyiv. And then I started scrolling through the news and I realized that the attack has been ongoing for 2 hours by the moment I woke up myself. An attack touched multiple cities all over Ukraine. Kharkiv on the east of Ukraine has been hit over 15 times. Then also towns and cities in western Ukraine, in Lviv region, Ivano-Frankivsk region, in the center of Ukraine, in the south, in Odesa. So it was really massive. There were lots of missiles and drones that were attacking the country over the night. And we do know of at least 3 people killed. 2 of them, at least 2, have been killed in a residential house in Lviv region. I think that is the video that you are showing. Oh, no, that was a different one. But at least 3 people have been killed, at least 2 in Lviv, which is on the west, and at least 1 person in Dnipropetrovsk region, which is in the center of Ukraine.
OK, thank you very much indeed for the update. Thank you. This is the time of the programme when we do the happy birthday. The team was saying there's nobody famous whose birthday it was today. I said, hold me coat. This handsome fella, check him out. There he goes. That is my daddy. He would have been, isn't he? How handsome was my dad? He would have been 91 today, and he told me to always have a healthy disregard for authority. There he is. He said the impossible might take a little bit longer. That was something that I've lived by ever since. Speaking of families, we'll tell you about Eurovision in a second, because I want to bring in these boys while we're talking about family. Handsome chaps, all 3 of you. Obviously brothers, Tom, Max and Hugo. Tell me your story.
So when I was 6, I went into hospital went in to see a doctor with, I just had gastric flu, and it was all very routine. And they took my blood pressure as a matter of course, and it was incredibly high. So they thought the machine was broken. So then did it again and again, and realised I had this problem. So rushed me to hospital and found out that I had chronic kidney disease.
Wow.
And I mean, it wasn't a problem back then. I mean, it was stage 3, sort of 75% kidney function. So actually it was fine and completely manageable. And actually most of my life, I'm 31 now, it hasn't affected me at all. But then it was about 5 years ago, I got sepsis. after an operation, which takes such a toll on the body, and it about halved my kidney function. And then I got it again last year, and really dropped it to the point where actually it's progressed to stage 5 now.
Wow.
Which is when you, need to do something about it, quite seriously. Yeah.
Q Max. Talk to me.
Yeah, well, we all went to get tested. So myself, Bubs, and my dad, and my mother as well, but she's not a match. So all 3 of us are, which gives us options.
Yeah. Hugo is Bubs, obviously, because he's
sorry.
the baby.
Hugo.
You're the youngster. So
Yeah.
you obviously have lived with your brother's challenges as well, and you both are a match. Why should it be you?
So we think actually we might go with Max, but our dad is also a match.
Right.
So it'll probably be between those 2. And then hopefully, this kidney will last a long time, but there is a chance that Tom will probably need another kidney. So then hopefully that's where I'll come in, and then I'll be the second transplant donor.
Because they last for about 25 years, am I
Well,
right?
it's amazing how far research has come, and Kids Kidney Research UK, have done a huge amount to the point where it was only a few years originally. But now, from a dead donor, if you take a kidney, it's about 8 to 10 years.
Right.
But because I've got these options, because my brothers are doing something so amazing, it's potentially 12 to 20.
Right.
Some go on for 30, 40, 50 years. So it's more likely that you'll need a couple. You'll need to line them up.
And they're lining up.
Something for Bubs to look forward to,
Yeah, OK. When you heard that your brother needed a kidney donor, I'm sure you didn't even hesitate. But what was it like growing up with him? Because obviously he's younger. You're younger than your brother, aren't you?
Obviously.
What was it like? I mean, he was very poorly at times, wasn't he?
He was very poorly at age 6, but then I was 10 years old, so I was quite young.
Yeah.
Growing up, it was never really an issue because it just became the norm. He was on blood pressure pills on a daily basis, so it was more difficult for him to get used to than it was for us, really. It was just when he got sepsis and had to go to hospital, then it all became quite real because then you realise that actually something is quite wrong and something's going to need to be done about it.
And do you know when... I'll come back to you again in a second, but do you know when the op might be if you're...
We don't yet. We're waiting to hear from Professor Brown, who's his consultant.
Okay.
And he's got an appointment in April. So depending on the outcome of that, then we'll see whether it's in 2 months' time or 6 months' time.
Yeah. And Bubs, it'll be your turn in about a decade or so, depending how things go. You don't mind calling me Bubs? Calling you Bubs, hopefully.
Yeah, we do know someone who I think it's lasted pretty much all their life, and that was from a dead kidney donor. And live kidney donors are supposed to last a bit longer, so fingers crossed, won't be for a while.
OK. It's an amazing story. What do you want people at home to know about? I mean, can people be on registers for this sort of thing?
Yeah, so, I mean, the key thing is that kidney disease affects, I think, 3.5 million people in the UK. And most people have never heard of it and never thought it would be a problem, never really thought much about the kidneys. But it's amazing what an impact it has and how it can affect your life, so detrimentally. So for me, it was just a routine blood pressure check. Otherwise, I could have had a stroke at any time. I probably shouldn't be here today. So if you get a chance, go to your nearest pharmacy, get a blood pressure check. For those who really want to do something incredible, Nicola, who's our live donor coordinator, is part of this scheme where if none of my family were matches, they would go on this kidney pairing register, which what they do is, they would pair, say, Max up with someone in Edinburgh, it'd be a match, and then link it all together. And it's not uncommon for people to actually donate a kidney to someone they don't know, to just contact their local transplant unit and say, you know what, I can change someone's life, Because it takes your, if you're on dialysis, you've got about 5 years. With a transplant, you've got a future.
OK, we've only got 25 seconds left, and I forgot about the tattoos. Tell me quickly about the tattoos, Bubs.
Oh, dear, the tattoos. I was hoping you weren't going to bring that up, actually. Yes, we all have matching tattoos on our ankles. I was worried that you might show a picture of it, actually.
We have done, yeah.
It looks like the MOT sign. We hadn't quite got that. Realised after.
Good luck with the op. Talk to us
you.
afterwards. Thanks for coming in, guys.
Thank you
Good
very
to
much.
see you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
a lot. See you in just a second.